Hello, welcome to the podcast of Startup Recruitment Failures. I'm Indra, founder and CEO of JobRely. We're building artificial intelligence for outbound recruitment. And today my guest is Steven Murray, head of future projects at Zomato Portugal. Steven, could you please introduce yourself and your company?
Hi. I'm Steve. Thanks for having me. It's great to chat to you. I'm with Zomato Portugal. We essentially are a restaurant marketplace, and we use that restaurant marketplace to gather a lot of consumer trends and data insights. We've been operational in Portugal for over 9 years, so we've got a nice established track record, and have experienced a lot of the startup pains from early stage to late stage.
I can imagine. Yeah. I can imagine. And you yourself, you have a lot of experience in recruitment, HR, and especially not only in one country, but in a few ones. Could you tell us your journey and your experience?
Yeah, so I've been in the startup space for quite a long time, and that's exposed me to both business and recruitment, like you said. So I took a sort of a step over to the recruitment side, or more the HR side, when I took a role at a global role in India. But I think that when you are running startups, you're often exposed to recruitment at some stage. As you're trying to grow your teams, you have to take these things on before you pass them off to an HR person. So I've had that experience, and I've been lucky enough to work in multiple markets. So I've worked in South Africa, I've worked in Hong Kong, and worked in India, and now Europe. So I've had diverse experience in terms of recruiting in different cultures, recruiting at different phases, and at different scale of the business.
So in terms of locations, different countries and different mentalities, what differences do you see in recruitment, in attracting talented people?
So I think that the one main thing that you tend to see is the sort of the size of the talent pool that you're kind of exposed to. The more sort of specialized your space is, the smaller your talent pools can be in these spaces. But population definitely plays an important role in terms of how many people might apply for the job, and then how to filter through that. So I think it will also change your strategies from predominantly inbound strategies to outbound strategies. Like, it might be very easy to generate inbound sort of interest in your business in really large markets, and smaller markets it's not as easy to do it, just because, number one, the talent's not there, or actually you might be in a completely new space. So those are some of the key things that I noticed are different.
So big talent pool, of course, it's good news for every startup, but when it's very big, like it is in India, it's another challenge, right? To go through all the applicants and to choose, and especially if you're not living and don't have a lot of experience in that country, what criteria to use. How did you deal with that, with a huge supply of talents?
Yeah, so India is a very good example. For us, is that if, first of all, we had a really credible business, so a really well-established brand name. So we were considered like a hot ticket in terms of employer, which was really great. What it did mean is that when we do turn on job post, we'd have a massive sort of inbound queries.
It's
everyone's dream, right? So so if we posted a job post, within 30 minutes, we'd have about 900 applicants.
Wow.
And that could be anything. It could be a sales role right up to a tech role. So I think that the need for jobs is one aspect, and also the value that we had as an employer was really good. So I think the first standard thing that we would always do is do a mass filter based on the first communication that we receive. So we, as a company that was agile and constantly pivoting, how people communicate was a critical thing for us to sort of establish. So was the language good? The way that they approached the questions that we asked really good? And how well structured their content that they provided us was in terms of CVs or video content that they submitted. So that was an easy first filter for us. If they're really specialized roles, engineering roles, there'd be a secondary filter in terms of experience, like consumer-facing apps or websites that we'd want them to have experience in, specifically where design and user thinking was like really critical for us. So that's an easy filter, right? Like that eliminates quite a lot of people, especially from the engineering and design space. And then it would be going into a sort of a rigorous sort of interview process at minimum 3 to 4 interviews. So if they were sort of low tier roles within the business, we could work with agencies to help us on that filtering piece. So we would select our agencies the same way we'd select our candidates. They would have to be a very good culture fit. They'd have to show good system and process and a good understanding of our business. And then we would allocate agents for our lower tier roles, especially because those would have the most sort of candidates apply. And then all of the sort of critical roles were done internally within our business. So we do literally hiring days from Friday to Sunday and run through mass interviews where each candidate would sort of have 3 to 5 interviews in a day. And at the end of the day, a candidate would be scored, and then we would choose whether they go or no go, with the CTO always having a final say in terms of whether engineering candidates were hired. So that was I think that culturally that was a big shock to me, sort of coming from a small market like South Africa and then from Portugal and then going to India and just like being completely overloaded. So the first 3 hiring days, to say that I was completely exhausted at the end was an understatement. But it was a very good experience in terms of completely different exposure.
Was it easy to choose most suitable ones, especially if you're new in the market? And were there any cultural differences you have to learn about and to better understand the fit?
Yeah, so I think it was difficult. I think that there were some cultural adjustments that I had to then learn, which was good, but I wasn't the ultimate final say in that. So if I sat and interviewed someone, what I would typically look for was predominantly culture fit to the organization. So what is their attitude towards specific problems or specific situational questions that I would pose to them, and sort of how their mindset worked in terms of growth and what they were really looking for in the job. So if you ask someone specifically, like, so what are the key things that you want to work for Zomato? Why do you want to work here? And remuneration was like highly rated, and growth and what would my title be and who am I reporting to were immediate flags for us, because as a startup that was pivoting, we were like, those things don't really exist for us. We don't have a very structured hierarchy.
Exactly.
That you then work here 2 years, then move to the next role, then move to engineering 1, engineering 2, etc. We knew that didn't happen.
No time for that.
So they weren't going to be a very good fit for us. So if they were really smart, but they wanted those things, they probably wouldn't enjoy the time at Zomato. So those are kind of like quick filters that I could do that sort of those go beyond any culture. They're really what drive people. And if those were things that would really drive an individual, they wouldn't be a good fit for us. And I would immediately reject that candidate. So I think that you sit in a room and you try to get to the base of who the person is, regardless of what they're saying. And that's always the trick in recruiting.
Yeah. Would you have any tricky questions? How do you assess that?
Yeah, so like an example, we'd ask an ethics question always, and it's a very simple ethics question when you think about it. But essentially, we would ask someone, okay, we have a client, they're on the platform, and they receive a bad review from a customer, and they're coming to us and they say, hey, this review needs to be removed, or we're going to stop paying you for the other products and services that we use from you. What would you do? And the immediate answer is nothing. We wouldn't mess with the quality or the credibility of our content and our user reviews, because that's our lifeblood, and we don't do that. So we'd be willing to lose the client. So anyone who tries to sort of, okay, I think that we could do it or not, is like aren't really tuned into the ethics of what we want and the value that we presented. So we would do questions like that would then identify whether they're always going to do the right thing
Yeah.
when pressured by a client. And it's quite normal for people to think, oh, if they're a big client and they're paying us a lot of money, we should probably listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
The salespeople always try to
Yeah.
turn it
Play
around.
around.
I'm going to try. The first thing is I'll try to explain to the customer. I said, okay, you get to the end point, and they'll get there to the ultimate right way to go about things. But yeah, we would do things like that,
Mhm.
and then try and also get a good sense of um, like why you here is such a simple question. Like, so why did you apply for the role, or do you use our application today?
Mhm.
And that for us was a big piece is you needed to be passionate about what we're doing,
Yeah.
And then the last one is like, can you give us some feedback on what we're doing that's really bad? And we'd say it directly, like, what are we doing that absolutely sucks?
Mhm.
And we would want someone, even in an interview situation, to be able to voice that opinion. I think that this is really bad
Mhm.
because we are constantly pushing things, and our first testing audience within our business is actually our employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we want honest and candid feedback coming back from them that we can do something constructively with. So, like,
Mhm.
if that wasn't there, they weren't going to survive in the teams, because if they were going to be, and the boss says this, and that's what we're going to do, it wasn't really how we run our organization. So it was.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And in my experience, I had so many cases that people are coming only for the interviewing in the sake of getting a job. And when you ask, did you read about the company? They're like, yes, but maybe you could specify me and tell me more. And this is already the red flag that the person haven't read anything and they
Yes.
don't even know why they are here, right? So what is the motivation? And I know a few companies and they're doing a very good job, I think, because even at the very first stage when a candidate is applying, they have to do the task using the platforms basically, and
Yes.
the companies already know that these people try them out, they know what is it about, they already know what is being expected. So I think it shows a great level of motivation and the interest in
Yeah.
the product itself, because if there's no, so it's very
Yeah, you spend a huge amount of your time at work,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
people that you work with every single day need to be people that, number one, they should inspire you.
Hmm.
They should push you to a new level in terms of performance.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, when you're exhausted after doing a really long day, you should really want to sit down with the person and say, "Geez, I'm willing to actually
Yeah.
extend this day and go and have a beer or spend some social time with you." I think that that's generally the feel
Hmm.
of the people that we want to work with, and that's what actually develops your culture. You can stick everything you want on the wall in terms of these are our values and this is how we see things. Those things are good reminders, but actually it comes from the base attributes of the people that you hire, and they need to easily align to those things in a natural way. And so I think so hiring is like really critical. And I think interview processes are typically flawed is because the minute you ask someone a question, by default, they will give you the answer that you want, not necessarily the answer that you. Sometimes they marry, like sometimes they're the same. The answer that you want is what they feel, but that's how we are as our human nature is to answer a question in the right way. So what really is important beyond that is the culture of the individual and what sort of they're aspiring to and why they want to be there, and that passion that they have for the things that you're doing. And so, yeah, I mean, one step is like, hey, have you read about us? Do you use our products? The second thing is like, in your free time, what do you do around this type of industry? Are you invested in this industry? Like, so what do you know about the food tech space, and what excites you about the food tech space? And those are really
Hmm.
important things to try and assess. Is like, is this something that's just a 9 to 5 for them, especially in the startup space, or like they really like the space, they really like things that you're disrupting, they really feel your brand every single day. So I think that's all
Hmm.
really critical.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So we talked about the huge market opportunities and the like too many applications to deal with. How about hiring people in small markets like in Portugal? So what challenges do you face and how do you solve it?
So I think one key challenge is getting a strong employer brand out, to
Hmm.
making sure that what you're doing resonates with the people that you want to hire. So, I think, and especially the demographic that you're trying to hire. So, if your demographic, for instance, is really interested in sustainability, you should be putting things out on your sort of on your brand that showcases that you do things around sustainability. You should, because you're going to be spending more time selling than buying, and so that's really a critical thing is like establish yourself in terms of what you do that makes it really exciting. I think the other thing is that you can have a lot of people arrive at your business who not know who you are.
Yeah.
And so you might spend a small portion of the interview process actually highlighting why you're a great fit for them. And so I think that that's a key thing to just pay attention to is that, I think that the
How did you
competitions
do
are.
with Zomato in terms of the employer branding? What steps did you take in?
So I think the first thing was our online sort of profiles. We really made sure that they're very well established. Like, so we paid attention to things like what does our Glassdoor rating look like? What does our LinkedIn page look like? What is the content that we're pushing out through those typical employee and employer channels? And I think the other thing is that when you go into the interview process, make sure that your communication is really good. Make sure that you're informing candidates along the way so they get this really strong feeling of professionalism and care. And so that's just another touch point that often gets forgotten. Is to say, hey, actually, they're actually interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them, and make sure that there's some professional courtesy in those things. And I think a nice touch to add at the end in terms of employer branding is always to give feedback, legitimate feedback to candidates who are not successful. Is like,
because you never know, you might need them
exactly,
later.
the standard is, we found someone more suited to the role or whatever, is nice and generic, but there should be some sort of development on that. It's like, we really liked what you said about this in the interview. These were great points for us. These were things that we thought might not be a good fit for us. And then sort of move on. It takes a bit of time to do that, but I think in smaller hiring, you sort of have the time to be able to do those things. As you get bigger, you can actually implement processes and platforms that will do that for you. But I think it really is key to try and make sure that your communication is really solid.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that candidate experience is the most important thing, because if you have nice posts, but people after the interviewing process start talking bad things about the company, so it's not working, right? It's very important, because the candidate could, everyone is talking about the interviewing process, sharing this with their friends. So it's very important to leave a good impression and to treat them, even if they're not suitable for this particular role now, for the future, well. And could you share any example, any case when you hired and you noticed that, it's not actually a match, because it's never 100% decision.
So I've got two different cases. So the one is that we, as a business, we expanded too fast, and so we overhired. So we had a huge sort of overload of people that we had to suddenly draw back on, and that's always tough, because you feel that you've hired great people, and then you've kind of got to go back to that same audience and say, well, actually, we can't keep you on. So that's always tough, I think, and getting to my point of even the ones who aren't a mismatch. I think if you sit down with someone and you highlight that for them, they often agree with, provided it's reasonable, they'll often agree with what you're saying. So if someone has been in the organization for 3 months and you can see that they're not fitting, is to sit down and call that out directly, like honest feedback. Hey, listen, this is kind of where we are, or even a month in, this is kind of where we are. And we can drag this on, or we can find a reasonable way for you to find the right fit for you. But it's not working for us, and it's not working for you. You can see that you're not happy. That's going to impact your performance. We don't want it to get to a point where we're evaluating on performance and negatively marking performance, because that type of exit's not good for anyone. Right? So, and most people will agree. And you'll often find that they've been feeling the same way, but they just didn't know how to bring that subject up. And so in all instances where that has happened to me, I find a great conversation about that with the person, and being completely fair and transparent gets a resolution much quicker, and everyone can shake hands and walk away from the exchange in a good way. You do have to assess whether it's us or them, have we set the wrong expectation? Did they, what is that kind of why is that mismatch happening? And that's about continued transparent communication within your business. You need to be able to, they need to be comfortable with that, and they need to be comfortable giving it. So we always try to foster an environment where people are able to speak their mind and to speak openly without judgment or worry about some sort of, you know, I don't know, retribution later. I think that for us is really important. So we have a very open communication structure, and that starts right at the interview process. Hey, I don't agree with what you're saying in the way that someone's answered, and then debating that. And then letting that debate sort of move on. Say, okay, we both have valid points, and let them know that, okay, we had the disagreement even in this interview, but we were able to move past or debate specific things openly without you thinking that that's the end of the job opportunity for you. So I think that that's where it starts, and then you continue that throughout.
This is a great exercise, and I would like to emphasize on that because I remember once I found an amazing candidate. She was like, her profile was really incredible, with a lot of experience and very suitable for the company. But there was team assessing her, and she was making the presentation, and CMO started to give some challenging questions, not showing that there is a disagreement or something, but only challenging. And she was so upset. She got so angry, with everything. And we noticed that there's no match, right? You cannot work like this. You cannot not give any feedback, even if it's a wrong one. You need to share freely, right? And then to find the common agreement. So yeah, I think we usually, and especially when we are headhunting, we are trying to look very nice employers, and to present ourselves as best as we could. And sometimes maybe we're too afraid to show how exactly is things are working here. And it's very important, because otherwise there are just misexpectations.
Yeah, I know of an example where sort of the recruiting process included a sort of a weekend away before the interviews began. So just kind of like get to know each other. It was like a really high end opportunity, and the candidates all went away, and one specific candidate, really intelligent, did a great job on the weekend, looked very likable, really great sort of great fit in any organization. And he went through, of 8 interviews, he went through 7 perfectly, and then the 8th had some challenges. And the specific challenge was problem statements were presented. He solved those problem statements correctly, but not in a way that made sense to the interviewer. And the interviewer's issues like, I agree that you're right, but the way that you're presenting the solution is a problem, because then I can't carry that on to my clients. And so that for me is a no. And then and you had to get 8 out of 8 to be hired. And so he was a reject. He phoned back really upset and said, like, that's, pretty unreasonable. I still got the right answer. I've been through 7 out of 8. And the recruiter just said, that's true, but you and that interviewer didn't like each other, and that would be your reporting manager. And so already you have a cultural mismatch. So what is your work environment going to be like there? And so this is not a good organizational fit for you. And so, the candidate was immediately like, actually, you're right.
Yeah, of course. It's
I'm
not good for you.
I could win this argument and I could get given the job, but I'm going to have a terrible sort of next 2 or 3 years working under this specific manager. And so that was
That's the thing. I think most of the time, not always, but sometimes we forget that it's a really big commitment, right? We're going to see these people like each other all the time, and we need to feel good. If we don't, how can we perform and deliver? So these things really matter. And when it comes to the different stages of the company, so what differences you see when you were still a small company and you started growing? What challenges did you face?
So when you're a small company, you will get candidates in you have to be still very selective in terms of finding people who are going to help you grow your business and who are have a lot of grit, who are willing to sort of suffer a lot of things that aren't in place. Like sometimes your HR policies aren't even in place. Sort of how you remunerate isn't really formalized. Like it can be quite a messy sort of setup, and you're working on a lot of faith in each other. And there, the way that you present your vision is critical. What are we solving, and why are we solving this problem? Why are we the right people to be solving this problem? Is really critical message to be able to deliver well, because that gives buy-in for people who will often serve you for many years within your company, and they become the cultural backbone of your business. They get it, they understand it, they believe in it, and they will show up at 3 a.m. in the morning to solve that problem with you, right? Like, so it's in the early
How to
stage.
find these people?
Yeah. I mean,
Everyone would like to
so the
have
first
them on
piece is
board.
often you will find friends and family that fit that mold for you, right? Like I'm going to do this thing, and this person that I know has been doing it for a while, and you're convincing them to come over and start that journey with you is like the first piece. And so a lot of the first and best hires come through some sort of referral. And if you have a really strong referral campaign, it generates a sort of a strong culture because they're people that you know, people that you like, and people that are smart like you, right? Or from similar circles like you. So that's kind of the first step. And that once you become more established and you get a little bit more noise about what you're doing and some excitement, and you get some users sort of starting to use your platform and your apps, it becomes a little bit easier. Then you can start to hire from your user base. Right, like you can start talking to them predominantly and start saying, "Hey, we're hiring and we're growing. If you love what we're doing," and often you get a lot of inbound requests saying, "Hey, I love what you built with Zamata. I'm actually a food journalist and I want to do this stuff." And then you start chatting to them like, "Well, actually, you're a salesperson. Why don't you come and help us solve this problem for a few years?" And when we set up our content teams later on, you can move over into that team. So that's often the evolution that we saw with people. So I know when I worked in Hong Kong, it was just me starting there, working with banks, and I got to a point where I was just not managing. And the first person I actually hired was someone that I knew directly, who was a friend. And I was like, "Okay, you have this amazing way of organizing things, very direct, like super hardcore woman, and she's like, should go after stuff." I'm like, "Hey, come and join." And the first interview, she spent most of the first conversation interviewing me.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
like, what are you doing?
If
And
they
why
are
are you doing it? And
interested.
like, what's your backstory? But it generated like a great working relationship because it was tough. So it was really good. And then, when you get to sort of Zomato size in India, at one point we had 5,000 employees, and we had 250,000 delivery partners, and it was a really big people organization in terms of people. Things change. Things change quite a lot in terms of how, like we spoke about, how we manage and process people and how we attract people. It gets significantly easier, and then the hard work is on filtering.
Isn't it risky to hire a friend?
Yeah,
You might lose both, right? Your co-founder and your friend at the same time if things won't go well.
yeah. I think going into business with friends is different to hiring friends, right? Like, I think depending on the relationship that you have with that person, again, is that if you have a very transparent and honest relationship where you're able to call things out directly, like this is not working or this can be better, and they're open to that feedback and they can give you that feedback too, and you're okay taking it from them, that's a good friend to hire.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about immediate friends. I'm talking about like people right? Like, so there's still some degree of separation where communication can flow without worrying about hurting feelings, right? Like, I think that's okay. I think the whole thing is like risk of getting into business with friends and family is true. Like, that can really be damaging because those things, if they fail, they never fail nicely, right? Like,
Yeah.
they fail in
Everything
some way.
fails.
Someone's walking away who either paid too much money, or someone didn't put in enough time, or the market didn't like what you were doing. So egos can really get hurt there, and then it becomes difficult to separate what's friends and what's family and what's just business.
What I find very interesting, it's like it's both sides. So it's really nice if you know a person well and you can communicate directly. But if it's a good friend, you might be too direct, right? And it could hurt. With the employees you're hiring, usually they are afraid if you're the manager, like they direct report, they are afraid to give you direct feedback. And this is also bad because you don't know what they are thinking, right? So
Yeah,
you always have to navigate
yeah,
and to, I don't know, to try to be friendly, but not too much. And it's, yeah,
exactly.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I've worked with my wife in the same organization, and she doesn't know me in a professional context. So, like when we both moved to India, she started working at Tomato too, and she literally sat across the desk from me.
Okay.
And I had a whole team of people looking up to me, and then I had my wife sitting across the table. And so, when I was saying something like very boss-like to my team, sort of my wife was like, who is this? And that's not how he is. We had to immediately create that separation within the business. Like, you need to be here, and this is how we're going to draw the
Yeah.
line, the sort of the boundaries of what we do. And I think when you're hiring, it's the same.
Yeah.
If we can't find a line that we both agree is there, and it's that evaluation that you do, should I go with this person? And you have to maybe even be more critical of their attributes before you do that. But yeah, I think close close acquaintances, people or even speaking to people within the industry that you're friendly with in the industry that are doing great things, are great first employees in the early stages of your business.
Okay, great, great. And talking about like different styles, like working styles changing now because everyone were working in offices. Then COVID came, everyone started working remotely. And I know that you had this experience yourself, like coming back to office. What do you think about these differences? Which way of working do you prefer and works most better for you?
So personally, I find I like a hybrid model. I think I get my mindset is that when you go to work, you do better work. Um, and I find that there's a huge amount of value in the water cooler conversations that happen outside of the meeting room. I think that if you start your meeting with some idea, and that starts to evolve outside of the meeting room. And a good example is like the smokers' corner is always talking about the best stuff.
Yeah.
And you go down there, and people are very relaxed. They're having cigarettes, so they're not really in work mode. And the creativity and the sharing and the thinking and the laughing that's attached to the way that we brainstorm is really good. And so I think that we miss a lot of that when we're not in the office. And so you need to create a platform for those things to happen. And I think also looking at someone through a screen, you lose a lot of body language context, which is really critical in terms of how we deliver messages and how people take things. And it's also exhausting. I think that working from home can often be more exhausting because everything is managed digitally. You see an open calendar sheet, and so you fill every single hour with that. And the breakaway to sort of think about problems and to think about relationships within the business and to think about how you're going to sort of solve things isn't happening enough. So cool. If you want focused work, do it at home. I get it. I have high output when I set my flow timer, and I do 30 minutes like really focused work, take a 5-minute break. I'm very disciplined about that working from home. But people connection is really essential to moving businesses. You ask more of people, you have great conversations around it. And I think that you need to be in person to do that well.
What kind of the hybrid model do you have? Because it can mean different things, right?
Yeah, so essentially we have one compulsory in-office day per week per
That
team.
everyone would be together.
Yeah. So and it's not whole company; it's like team-wise. So your team must be in office at least once a week. But what's actually starting to organically happen is more than once a week our teams are here, and then most of the teams choose the same day as their in-office day, like
Nice.
say a Monday, because that's a really good planning day, etc. So we have that that's solid to generate people coming back into the office. So today's a very quiet day. It's Friday. Most people want to work from home. A sunny day.
And it's a sunny day.
It's a nice sunny day, but yeah, I think that, and then we have we call them Zone and Touch days, where it's a way for us to interact with each other. And those are specific interaction days. So we'll have big meeting day, talk about how the company's doing, connect around that, have something to eat, and then we'll do some sort of activity together related to the business, like going out and putting stickers on the windows in restaurants or whatever it is. But we do that as some sort of team connection day.
Nice. Yeah. And how is it working for you? Is everyone excited about it? Did you have some negative feedback?
No, I think, maybe in our case it's different. We've always had a great culture in the business, and people tend to like each other. So I think that COVID was like more upsetting for us to be trapped at home the whole day. And so when we started to do these things and just coordinating coming back to the office, most people were very happy to do it or saw the value in it. And in general, we find a lot of folks in the office anyway, sort of coming in and using this as their quiet space to really get some work done. The amount of distractions that you actually have at home is quite a lot. And so you can actually have better focused output days in the office than at home.
Yeah. Plus, to share with whom at home can you share your work thoughts, right?
Yeah.
You need to get some feedback and to share some things.
Yeah. The only thing we don't have as good here as at home is a fridge. Right, like the fridge at home is always better, but the rest is much better. Wi-Fi is good. Plants are still alive. It's all good, yeah.
Great. And to conclude, what would be your key advice for a new co-founder who just started recruitment? What would you advise that person at first?
I think that, in terms of hiring people, you already put a lot of efforts into trying to create the perfect system or the perfect process for hiring people. But the reality is that you can't really get it right. You generally do. If you follow your gut, it's really a critical indicator for you. It's giving you some sort of awareness. And so where there's any question, there's no question. And so if you're questioning the candidate and it's not 100% right, but you're desperate for people, rather just wait out a little bit for the right candidate. I think that you might not have a lot of revenue, you don't have a lot of capital, and exiting people is not only a difficult conversation to have, it's quite costly.
Yeah.
So take a little bit of extra time in terms of that and listen to what your gut's telling you in terms of what the person's doing. And don't be afraid to voice concerns around your gut, what your gut's telling you with the candidate directly. Like, I'm feeling this. It seems to me you're saying this. I'm not sure about this. And if you're unable to resolve that question well for yourself, don't hire.
Great. Thank you so much, Steven, for your time and sharing your insights. And thank you to all the listeners. For more podcasts, please visit jobrely.com. And if you like this one, please leave your review on Spotify.